Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Grounded, the Vestibular podcast. Dr. Jenna and I are here today to talk to you all about motivation and consistency. And this is a question that I've been getting a lot, both in Vestibular Group Fit as well as in my DMs of like, how do I do the things? And that's literally the question of like, how do I make myself do this? And I think it's a easier said than done, but we have some tips and tricks for staying consistent.
Yes, always easier said than done. And it's normal for it to feel so overwhelming because we're thinking of the ultimate end goal that we want, and we're not breaking it down into those smaller chunks, which is where that consistency really helps to build into this. And that's when we start getting into that whole motivation. But I know I'm getting ahead.
So I'm going to define motivation. So, like, the actual definition of motivation is: are you feeling alone, frustrated, and dizzy in your vestibular journey? Small group coaching offers personalized support to guide you through. With less than 10 members, you'll have a dedicated chat room for 24/7 support, lifetime access to our content, and weekly meetings led by Doctors Madison and Jenna. Our 9-week program covers specific topics each week, designed to help you break the dizzy, anxious, dizzy cycle and find relief from chronic symptoms. Don't navigate this journey alone. Join us and make huge changes in your vestibular journey today. Take it from small group coaching graduate Lindsay. She says that when I started small group, my life changed almost immediately. I finally had other people validating my symptoms and I felt heard. The insights and expertise that both Madison and Jenna provide are priceless. With the information in the course, I learned what was happening in my body, and I was able to move from a state of hypervigilant stress and anxiety to a place of understanding. I am not in remission yet, but I'm having less attacks per month and the severity of each has decreased. I used to wake up each morning and think, how dizzy am I today? But now I get up and will often forget to scan for dizzy symptoms. I'm regaining my life and learning how to find joy in my everyday experiences again. Learn more at the link in the show notes below. The reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way, or the willingness of someone to do something, the general desire or willingness to do something. And honestly, I think that's a pretty good definition, but we want to start out by saying that, like, no one is motivated all the time. No one.
Like, I just heard that and I was like, that just goes against like human nature. Like, we like routine, we like predictability, and doing something new is something new. And we don't like adding new things. And that's why we say start really small. It sounds silly, but start with the smallest thing possible, because that already is going to be tough, because human nature, we don't want to do the new thing.
Totally. I was talking to my patient about this the other day, and she was like, well, I tried to do like all the things at once, and then like I just stopped doing them. And someone also who was still a Vestibular Group Fit member was like, I was doing all of the things in group for 6 months and I felt awesome, and then I stopped doing this. Is this something I have to do forever? And you don't have to do every single thing every single day forever. And this is where Dr. Jenna's B+ attitude really comes into play. But it's an important thing to remember that, like, you got to do some of the things all of the time for general health. If you're on YouTube and you're watching Hugo, it's kind of hilarious. Okay,
I closed my door so you couldn't hear Regina whine, but I think she's still sleeping, but she tends to wake up around now. Yeah, that 80%, the B+ attitude. Gosh, did you ever tell people what my saying was in PT school?
No, you should though.
The bottom of the top.
We made it this far. You would always tell me, and I'd be like so upset and like emotionally dysregulated, because I would get like that a lot in PT school. And Jenna literally walk in my room. She'd be like, Maddie, this is okay to feel like this. And you are already at the top. You're doing the things. You're in PT school. You made it to your goal. You can relax. That's a hard thing to do, but it's important to remember.
Like, if I get the worst test grade, but I'm still passing out of all my classmates, well, I'm still doing a lot better. I'm still in the program I want to be in. So I always think about the pyramids, and like, I don't need to be in the very tippy top of the pyramid. If I'm above 80% in that pyramid, I'm still pretty high up. I'm being the bottom of the top, because that means I'm still doing pretty darn good. And the extra 20% is probably giving me a lot more stress and hassle than it's ultimately worth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So bottom of the top, definitely sticking to that is super important. And remembering that, like, hey, I don't have to do this every single day, but I need to do it 80% of the time. Or I need to do 80% of the things 100% of the time. You could look at it either way. And being a perfectionist, which I am born and bred a perfectionist. Like, I want everything to be perfect except for the fact that, like, my desk is a mess. But other than that, I want everything to be perfect. Like, I want to do a perfectly good job baking a cake for a friend. I want to do a perfectly perfect job when doing literally anything. And the problem is that, like, life isn't perfect, and holding yourself to that standard is ultimately going to make you feel stressed out and actually make you dizzier. And so letting go of a little bit of that is a practice, and it is so, so hard, but it's going to help with a lot of that consistency.
Yeah, I really like the either 80% of the time, or like the person that was like, I was doing all this for 6 months and then I stopped, and like, do I have to do this forever? It's like, well, take a list of all the things you've been doing and try to hit for 80% of that to see if that just feels more flexible and attainable
Mhm.
for your day-to-day life. And the book that I will not stop talking about, because I'm trying to make it into the next book club for Vestibular Group Fit, which is why I talk about it a lot, because I'm reading it a lot. It talks about like expectations, and it's kind of that fine line of an area to talk about, where it's not like you want to be like, well, readjust your expectations. Like, that sounds really dismissive and like you're blowing them off, and just not a great initial phrase to hear. But it's just that idea of like, are your expectations putting like undue pressure on yourself? Is it really setting you up that like failure is the only option because you're holding yourself to such a high and impossible standard? Then yeah, let's relook at our expectations and make it something more attainable. And then it just takes the pressure off.
Absolutely. And again, this is like a all of these things are so much easier said than done, but it's absolutely so true. And like everything Dr. Jenna is saying is like holding yourself to this perfect expectation is actually impossible. It is impossible to do. It's impossible to live like that. And it's causing extra stress, which in turn causes emotional dysregulation, which in turn causes nervous system dysregulation, which will make you dizzier. And so all of these things are absolutely related. And I saw someone's Instagram story the other day, and it said something along the lines of like, I'm trying to do all these things to manage my health, and it feels so hard because I have kids and I'm doing whatever. And this person wasn't necessarily, I won't give you any details about them. They weren't necessarily in or not in the vestibular community. But the things on this list were things like drinking enough water and eating every couple of hours and sleeping at night and stuff like that. And while all of those things are not possible 100% of the time, those are things that you need to do for your health that we do not prioritize as human beings in 2024, whether or not you have a vestibular disorder. Like, if I don't do those things, I feel like junk. And we all know I don't have vestibular migraine. I think that's a confusion for some people. Dr. Jenna and I both don't have vestibular migraine, but like we both deal with other stuff, and both of us know that like if you don't do those things consistently, no matter what, you're gonna feel worse. And I think a lot of us are trained to be like, oh, I'm a little bit tired, that's fine, or I gained some weight, that's okay. Like, all of those things are kind of okay for us in a normal day-to-day basis because we're not taking care of ourselves. Not on everyone, and this is not your fault, and it's so much easier to say than do. But for you, if you're listening to this podcast, it is likely that the way that that like feeling worse presents is through a vestibular migraine attack or through increased dizziness. And so doing these things, no matter what, is required just to be a human being that feels good. And it's
Yeah.
hard.
It's so hard. Gosh, I know, just like, so I painted the entire first floor of my house, right? And I'm just always like, do I need another coat? Did I do this well? Like, and of course, like there's already paint on the trim from the previous owner. So I was like, I don't care if I get a little bit of paint on the trim because there's already existing paint on it. Whereas my like other self, my little perfectionist self is like, or I could just get all the paint off now. And it's like, no, 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 no. Like, you're here to paint the walls. We're not worrying about the trim. Like, it's going to be fine. And it'll probably be less stressful to just paint, knowing that if I get it on the trim, I don't care because there's already paint on it. And then I'll just clean it all off eventually at a later date.
Exactly. And we promise that this all has to do with consistency, because all of these things are like the things that you need to do consistently. And also, like, just like your analogy, which I think is great, like, do it pretty good. It's okay to be good at something and not perfect at something or great at something or the best at something. It's okay to just be good. And honestly, it's probably better to be good, because your nervous system isn't like, oh my God, I have to be perfect all the time, which again is something I struggle with. And it's like, I feel like I'm probably like preaching to the choir here. Is that the right term? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then like, it's really hard. And I am here with you in this struggle of like sleeping enough even. And I'm a person who will go to bed at 8:30 and kick people out of my house on a Friday night. I want to go to bed. But even still, like, my husband's out of town right now, and I'm like, "I'm gonna stay up till 10," and then I felt like crap in the morning, and I'm like, "Oh, why did I do that?" Right? But it's like, it's so much easier to say to do all these things and really hard to do them in practice, but also to feel like your best self doing these things is necessary.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then I think the other part is, again, some of that undue pressure is just like,
Mhm.
this is something I know I am creating in my own head, and other people are not going to care. Like, other people will probably not even notice this one spot, or like, you can see the trim in my like camera right now.
I
Like,
literally don't see any paint on your trim.
you can see that it's two different colors because I realize part at the bottom just isn't even there.
I literally can't see it.
Exactly. So I'm like, no one else is probably looking to nearly as much detail as I am at this trim.
Exactly. And doing something consistently is 150,000% better than being motivated to do it, which doesn't make really sense, but it also makes sense. What I'm trying to say is, like, if you want to be a perfectionist about something, be a perfectionist about doing something 80% of the time. That really helped me because I do this 80% and I'm good at doing it 80% of the time, which makes me feel pretty damn good, honestly.
Okay, that
But
reminds it reminds me of Friends when like Monica and Chandler were dating, and Monica gives like a horrible back massage and Chandler just lies, and Monica is so like, I need to be the best. Like, I need to be the best at everything. Like, Monica is like the personality trope of like the super type A perfectionist person.
yes.
And then she's like feeling so bad. Chandler lied. I can't believe I'm so bad at this. Like, she's not handling failure well. And he flips it where he's like, you're the worst, you're the best, worst back massage giver ever. And then it like clicked in her head of like, I'm still the best, even though I'm the worst. Like, I'm the best at being the worst.
It's me 80% of the time. Like, I can eat enough protein 80% of the time. I could drink enough water 80% of the time. I take my supplements 80% of the time. Did you know that in pharmaceuticals, consistent or being compliant with your medication means taking it 80% of the time?
Oh,
Like,
see,
your
the
doctor will
one
write in your
thing
note,
Big Pharma
compliant.
got right.
Seriously. Your doctor will say, "Oh, they're compliant if they take it." That's 5 out of 7 days a week, I think, after the math on that.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a weird number, 5
Yeah.
or 6,
I'm gonna
depending
do
how
that
you want
division
around
right
it.
now, but
And I think some of that has to do with like, trying to find the best scenarios to be consistent too. So like with protein for breakfast, like, okay, I might not hit it all the time, but if someone brought in like donut holes at the office and I want to have just one, like that would be the day to try to prioritize getting that protein, making it a little bit more well-rounded. So when you have something a little bit more like empty nutrition, sugar, but still a nice treat to have. Like, not everyone brings in donuts to the office. Like, that's the time that you want to make sure you're being 80%.
yeah, it's good for the soul. It's 100% good for that, right? It's like, if you're gonna have a donut, have a donut. But also, like, I think I was talking about this the other day. Like, I was having a bunch of cookie dough. If you saw my like spiral into the abyss on my Instagram story the other day of like me trying to do this thing that I really didn't want to do, which is actually what sparked the idea for this podcast, other than someone asking me about it also. But like, I really did not want to do something at all, even a little bit. And that was re-recording the vestibular or the not vestibular group fit, the vestibular migraine and triple PD masterclasses. And I didn't want to have to, I had to redo it because we were changing like pricing and stuff on April 1st. And so then I had to, oh my God, my dog is like trying to get up here. I'm so sorry. Hold on. You go, buddy. Hold on.
I was thinking, I feel like I can just figure out so many examples in my life where this comes up, like flossing, good for your
Oh my
teeth.
God, yes. I was thinking about that too, last night.
And it took me dating someone that habitually flosses before I started making that a habit, because I'm like, well, you're doing it and we brush our teeth around the same time because we're going to bed around the same time. So I'm going to floss. And sometimes if I'm flossing at a different time or getting ready for bed, I might not always do it. And then I
There
go,
you go.
this takes 5 more seconds. I should really do it. This is better than like a large dental bill, or like I had corn on the cob. Yeah, I should really floss my teeth. Like, pick your battles.
Exactly. Like we shower most days. I mean, I know if you're dizzy, showering is a hard one, but like you brush your teeth every day, right? Like you hopefully drink some water. Like all of the things that you need to do on a regular basis. I cannot believe Hugo is doing this podcast with me right now. Okay. But all the things you do on a regular basis, habit stacking them to be consistent. So like this sort of when Hugo so rudely interrupted me. Hugo's my dog, in case you don't know. When I was re-recording the stuff I didn't want to do, I had cookie dough to reward myself because I was doing something I really didn't want to do and was not at all motivated to do. And because of that, I was like, okay, now I've just had this like bajillion grams of sugar. Like they're homemade cookies. I know exactly how much sugar I put in them and chocolate chips in them and like all of the things. And I'm not going to be like, I'm never going to eat a cookie again. But what I am going to do is like, there's some chicken in my fridge that I'm going to have at the same time. So my blood sugar doesn't absolutely skyrocket and then plummet. And then I'm ruining the rest of my night because now I feel like junk. So there's just little things that you can do to stack on top of each other that help. And we wrote this thing, and it's that consistency leads to results, which then leads to motivation, which then leads to you wanting to do it and is more consistency. Not wanting to do something is not reason to not actually do it. Like not wanting to, I don't know, go to the gym doesn't mean that you don't need to exercise. Every human on this planet pretty much needs to exercise in some regard. It's good for us. Even if people are like, I'm allergic to exercise, I hate it, I won't do it, unless you have PEM, which like your doctor will tell you if you do. You need to be exercising. I don't care who you are or what you do for work or where you live or whatever. Like you have to do it even if you don't like it. You should find something you like. And though that consistency will be like, oh, now I'm feeling better. It's going to lead you to wanting to do it more. And that's true with every single thing on this planet. And you just have to do stuff. Life isn't perfect. Life isn't about like everything is fun all the time. Oh, most of life is pretty boring. Most of life is the same stuff every day, right? Like most of life is, and that's okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking, because I was like, why do we feel bad if we're not motivated like at the beginning? And I was like, this seems like social media might have a large hand in this. Like you feel bad, you feel like there's something wrong with you if you're not so excited to go to the gym. And I know sometimes those kind of like with habit stacking, it's like, is there a way to try to get you maybe more excited about it? Like, here's my new really pretty pair of like gym shoes, or a couple new like leggings that I only get to wear at the gym. And it's like trying to make it interesting. And then I feel like part of us feels bad. And then the other part of us goes, I'm a full grown adult and I don't need to listen to my parents anymore. If I just want to wear the leggings and don't go to the gym, like a thunderbolt is not going to strike them, like strike me down, you know? So then I feel like it just gets tough, because then we have like this internal like tantrum, at least I do, of like, yeah, I should really have some self-control and put some limits and kind of like mesh these together. And then sometimes I go, I'm an adult, I can just play my favorite show without having to like walk or bike or do an exercise routine with it. So it's really tough. And that's why, again, the whole 80% like can really help a little bit. If you try to go for 100%, usually you just end up saying, I'm not even going to bother because I know I'm not going to hit that.
100%. And you're an adult, you can make decisions for yourself, right? Like if you don't want to exercise, no one's going to make you do it. If you don't want to eat protein in the morning, no one's going to make you do it. If you want to have ice cream for dinner, you can. You're an adult. Like that's how the world works. But you won't feel great. You will not feel your best self. And this is something like you don't know how you can feel until you kind of get there, which is the motivating part. Like, I thought everyone was exhausted and fatigued and tired and wanted to go to bed at 1 p.m. every day. I thought everyone was like that until I worked with a specific person who helped me with the Dutch test and stuff like that. I'm pretty open about my health and whatever. And I literally thought everyone was exhausted and everything like that. And then after that, like, I just was like, okay, I have to make some changes. Like, I can't work all the time. I need balance. I need to like turn off my screens. I need to not scroll through Instagram till 11 p.m. Like, and once you start doing those things, not that you're not, but like those small changes are what often drive the biggest results.
Yep.
So, and also I know a lot of people will say like, they'll say like, well, I already do all those things and I still feel like this. That is very, very possible. But building that like foundation of quote unquote healthy things is how you get to the next level of everything else. And knowing that you can do those things consistently will help you bridge other things on top of those to build more results, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that, and also there's like a personal trainer, fitness nutrition guy I follow. I know his big calorie deficit.
Stop. Your Wi-Fi is being funny. You're like,
oh no. My connection is unstable, but it doesn't fully connect to Wi-Fi. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do about that.
You kind of like come and go.
Should I keep talking so you can tell if it's...
Yeah, it's still staticky.
I'm
gonna pause it for a second.
Plugging into your router or moving closer to it.
Do you have a Ethernet cord? What were you gonna say?
Okay. There was the like personal training, fitness, nutrition guy that has helped a lot of people with just general weight loss. And his big thing is like calorie deficit, like eat what you want, have the foods you enjoy, like in moderation, try to be consistent. You don't need to be perfect every day, but like you need to be in a calorie deficit in order to lose weight. Like that's just how weight loss works in a very generalized way. And if people are like, hey, I'm in a calorie deficit, but I'm not losing weight, his like somewhat sassy but funny retort is like, okay, well, check again, track better, track more accurately, and you might realize that you're not actually in a calorie deficit. So sometimes when people are like, I'm doing all the right things, I'm doing it all, I just want to be like, okay, list like exactly what you're doing. I'm not saying I don't believe you. I know you're doing these things, but like, could there maybe be some room for improvement or a way to just maybe dial it up and get more out of what you're already doing?
100%. And there is a exercise in the start here part of Vestibular Group Fit. Like, so when you first sign up, you take a little onboarding quiz. It's just 4 questions. It's very straightforward. And then after that, there's something that says start here. And that's always the one you should start with. Always start with the start here when you sign up. And in there's a bunch of different exercises like goal setting and finding your why and things like that. But I think one of the most effective ones is something called the wheel of management. Oh, Hugo wants to get down now. Oh, no, he doesn't. Oh my God, buddy. But it basically is 8 different categories. It's between like everything from mindset and movement to medical management and sleep. Like we include it all in there. There's 8 very specific things. And they all, of course, relate to the basics. I was very, very intentional with this. I stole the exercise from a business class I took, but it's a great thing to do to kind of evaluate. And someone's like, do I need to do this every day? Definitely not. Do it. I recommend people do it quarterly, like every couple months, like, hey, maybe I'll reevaluate. Or if you're like, I'm in a flare that I can't get out of, or I feel like I've hit a plateau, any of those times are good times to do this wheel of management exercise that we have in group, because it's going to help you really pinpoint like, oh, this is probably the thing that I need to work on. And no one's going to see it but you. It's just a like thing you can literally draw by yourself, or you can print it out. And you do this exercise and it's like, oh, I really need to be honest with myself here and say like, am I actually doing this really well on a consistent, regular basis or not? And I also want you to know that, like, again, doing this is really, really, really hard. And a patient I was seeing a couple days ago, she told me, well, like, I was doing all of these things and I felt great. And I also was on Effexor at that time, and then I switched my meds because, like, that wasn't working for me. And again, everyone's gonna be different with their meds. You have to take so many probably to figure out what's gonna work for you, and, like, Effexor can be a super great medication. Wasn't right for her, so she switched to a different one, and it doesn't work as well to stabilize her mood, so now she doesn't wanna do all the things and feels really, really unmotivated. And I was like, "Okay, but if you're feeling unmotivated, that doesn't necessarily mean you get to not be consistent anymore." So, we did the wheel of management together. She's like, "Oh, yeah, I haven't been sleeping. I haven't been moving my body. I haven't been doing my mindfulness work." All of those things really do play a big role. And again, consistency drives results, which ultimately drives motivation. I think I lost you, Jenna. Buddy.
I have the internet thing again.
Oh, there you are, sort of.
Come on.
Oh, there you are. Kind of.
Sorry.
That's okay. We'll switch for the next one.
Cool. What's it? I know.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about that?
I don't think so. If you can hear me.
I can kind of hear you. All right. Well, hopefully this is helpful. Remember that 80% of the time, do the things, or do 80% of the stuff 100% of the time. Whichever one of those things you want to do. You can be the bottom of the top of the pyramid of, like, I'm doing all of the things, but I can do all of them with a B plus attitude. That is definitely the way to go. And remember that life is not about the things we want to do. Life is about the stuff we have to do, and the fun stuff comes after that, or in the in between. So we love you, and thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.